Okay, so you want to own a cafe. And of everything on this channel, this is the one people genuinely daydream about. Not a warehouse, not a dealership. A room that smells like coffee, your name on the awning, and regulars who know your name back. The demand is certainly there. 66% of Americans drank coffee in the past day, according to the National Coffee Association's 2025 research. That is higher than any other beverage except bottled water. Out-of-home coffee purchasing reached 38%, the highest since before the pandemic. And the margin on the product is extraordinary. We will price out a latte in a minute, and you will see exactly how extraordinary. Two things to hold on to before we go anywhere. The first is a contradiction that should be impossible. Between early 2024 and February 2025, the price of coffee on the world market more than doubled, hitting an all-time record of $4.41 a pound. American grocery prices for ground coffee rose 41% in a year. Over roughly the same period, across about 148,000 American locations, the median price of a regular hot coffee went from $3.46 to $3.57. Coffee doubled. The cup went up 11 cents. The second is stranger, and it is a genuine paradox happening right now. The most profitable format in American coffee is the one with no chairs at all, and the largest coffee company on earth just committed $1 billion to putting chairs back in. Both of those are correct. Once you understand why, you understand this entire business. We will get to both, but we start with the cup, because the cup is where the illusion lives. Here is the thesis, and everything else is proof. A cafe does not sell coffee. It rents floor space by the minute, and the coffee is the receipt. Let's start with the part everyone gets right. Build a 12-ounce latte and count the inputs. The espresso, roughly 40 to 60 cents. The milk, 30 to 55 cents. The cup, lid and sleeve, 15 to 25 cents. Syrup, 10 to 20. All in, somewhere around $1 to $1.90 in materials on a drink that sells for $5 to $6.50. That is a gross margin in the 80s. And it gets better the simpler the drink gets. Drip coffee runs 85 to 90% gross margin. Espresso and Americano, 87 to 89. Cold brew, 80 to 85. Lattes, 83 to 85. Food drops to 40 to 65. And retail bags of beans, 40 to 55. Here is a detail almost nobody notices, and it is my favorite number in this research. Batch-brewed drip coffee takes about 2 minutes of labor and produces 12 to 15 cups. That is $45 to $65 of revenue for 2 minutes of a barista's time. The humblest product in the store is the most profitable thing per minute that a cafe sells. So the product is excellent, which raises the obvious question. If drinks carry an 80% margin, why is almost nobody getting rich? Now, this is where the sources genuinely disagree, and I want to be honest with you about it, rather than pick the number that sounds best. Some industry analyses put independent cafe net margins at 2.5% to 7%. Others report an average around 13.8%, with strong operators reaching 25%. Practitioner sources cluster around 8 to 18 at maturity. The gap is not really disagreement. It is accounting. The higher numbers usually come from owner-operated shops where the owner's own wage is folded into the profit line. The lower numbers come from models that pay a manager to do the owner's job, which gives you the honest version. A well-run independent cafe nets high single digits to low double digits after paying someone to run it. And for an owner-operator, a large share of what looks like profit is actually a wage they paid themselves. So where does 80% gross become 8% net? 3 lines. Cost of goods sold, 25 to 35% of revenue once food is in the mix. Labor, 28 to 35%. Occupancy, rent, and utilities, 8 to 14%. The industry has a term for the first two combined: prime cost. The benchmark is to keep it under 60 to 65%, and the data is blunt about what happens when you cannot. Profitable operators run labor around 34% of sales. Unprofitable ones run around 42%. 8 points of labor is the difference between a business and a hobby. Now, you could stop the video here, and you would already understand more about cafe economics than most people who sign a lease. Everything so far is a cost breakdown, and cost breakdowns are the easy part. The part that actually decides whether you survive is not on the cost sheet. And the fastest way to see it is to resolve the first thing I promised you. Let's go find out why coffee doubled and your latte did not. The commodity story was genuinely historic. Arabica futures hit $4.41 a pound in February 2025, an all-time high, then set another record at $4.38 in October. Drought in Brazil, weather damage to Vietnamese Robusta, certified inventories down more than half, and a 5th consecutive year of global Arabica deficit. Then tariffs, a universal 10% on imports in April 2025, then a 50% tariff on Brazilian goods, including coffee, effective in August. American imports of Brazilian coffee fell roughly 55% from August through November. The United States dropped to the world's second-largest coffee buyer, behind Germany. Coffee was largely exempted again in November. At the grocery store, this landed hard. Ground roast coffee hit $9.14 a pound in September 2025, up 41% year over year, and later peaked above $9.70. Reporting noted this was the steepest and most sustained coffee price run since the Bureau of Labor Statistics started tracking it in 1980. Now look at the menu board. Toast's data, drawn from roughly 148,000 locations, put median hot coffee at $3.57 for the year ending October 2025, about 3% higher. Cold brew, $5.33, up 2.6%. Lattes, $5.60, up under 4%. Grocery coffee, up 41%. Cafe coffee, up 3%. How? Because green coffee is a minority of a minority. Go back to the latte. Total materials, call it $1.20. The coffee itself, maybe 50 cents of that. On a $5.50 drink, the beans are around 9% of the price. Double 9%, and you have added roughly 50 cents of cost to a drink that also has to carry labor, rent, utilities, insurance, payment processing, and equipment financing. So here is the first hard proof of the thesis. If coffee were the product, the most violent coffee price shock in 45 years would have shown up on the menu board. It barely did. You were never really buying coffee. You were buying everything around it. So what is everything around it? Labor and occupancy. And both of those are payments for time and space, not for a product. Which brings us to the measurement almost nobody takes. A seat is not a chair. Cafe layout standards allocate roughly 12 square feet of customer floor per seat in a high turnover shop and 16 to 18 in a work-friendly one, because people spread out. So every seat is 14-ish square feet of leased floor that you pay for every month, whether it is occupied or not. Now add time. Design research puts dwell time in laptop-friendly layouts at around 67 minutes. Two-person tables turn in 25 to 40 minutes, four tops 45 to 90, and the National Coffee Association found 46% of visitors stayed up to 30 minutes. So run the calculation that never appears in a business plan. A $5.50 latte generates roughly $4.40 of gross profit. If that seat is occupied for an hour, that 14 square feet of leased floor earned $4.40 in that hour. The same drink, ordered and carried out in 90 seconds, generates the same $4.40, and the seat is immediately available again. Same product, same price, same margin on the cup, completely different business. And here is where I have to be careful, because there is an easy version of this where the person with the laptop is the villain, and the evidence does not support that. Long stays and low spending are not the same thing. There is a documented case of a Copenhagen cafe that changed its playlist to faster music. Average dwell dropped from 45 minutes to 23. It cost them roughly 800 euros a week in lost second drinks and desserts. They successfully turned tables faster and made less money. So the honest version is not that lingering customers are bad. It is that the seat is the scarce resource, and whether a long stay is profitable depends entirely on whether that customer keeps ordering. The unprofitable case is very specific. One drink, several hours, during your busiest window. And notice something. Every operator in the industry is solving this same equation, whether they name it or not. Time limits on laptops, fewer power outlets, harder chairs, communal tables, which raise density but reduce average ticket by an estimated 12 to 18% because strangers nearby make people order less and leave sooner. Or the most direct solution of all, remove the seats, which is the second thing I promised you. The National Coffee Association reported in late 2025 that an all-time high of 59% of coffee drinkers who bought coffee out of home in the past week bought it at a drive-thru. That is up 9% in a single year. And look at what that format does to the economics. Starbucks generates roughly $800 per square foot across about 2,000 square feet. Dutch Bros generates roughly $850 per square foot in around 1,300. More revenue per foot in a much smaller building with no dining room to staff, clean, heat, or lease. The unit volumes tell the same story. Scooter's Coffee reports system-wide average unit volume around $880,000. 7 Brew reports a median around 1.92 million. Dutch Bros runs in the range of 1.8 to 2 million per shop. Those are numbers a seated independent cafe cannot approach from buildings a fraction of the size. Dutch Bros ended 2025 with 1,136 shops across 25 states and has been buying franchises back rather than selling them. One analysis of foot traffic data described the shift as roughly a quarter of Starbucks customers and half its revenue migrating toward a different format. So the market has voted, and the vote is get rid of the chair, which makes what happened next genuinely fascinating. In September 2025, Starbucks announced a $1 billion restructuring. It closed more than 100 North American cafes and cut 900 non-retail jobs. And it committed to adding, in the chief executive's words, hundreds of thousands of seats. Brian Niccol described the diagnosis plainly. He said he walked into a store and found outlets covered or not working and not enough seats. Speaking at an event that same month, he said that when it is truly a third place, that is the point of difference, and that it is why people fell in love with Starbucks. They are spending around $150,000 per store on these renovations and had completed over 1,000 ahead of schedule. So one part of this industry is racing toward no seats, and the largest player is spending $1 billion putting seats back. Both are correct, and that is the whole insight. The seat is simultaneously the most expensive thing in a cafe, and the only reason a cafe is different from a vending machine. Remove it and you get throughput, efficiency, and margin, but you also become interchangeable with the next drive-through. Keep it and you get loyalty, community, and a reason to exist, but you take on the most expensive square footage in food service. There is no correct answer. There is only which business you have decided to be in. And most people who open a cafe never actually make that decision. They just sign a lease with a certain number of square feet and inherit the consequences. And there is one more structural problem, which is the clock. Coffee demand is concentrated in the morning. Estimates vary, and most are practitioner figures rather than audited data. But they consistently put something like 40 to 50% of daily traffic into a few morning hours. Your rent is charged by the month. Your baristas work shifts. Your espresso machine, refrigeration, lighting, and insurance run from open to close. So you carry roughly 12 hours of fixed cost to capture a demand spike that lasts a few. Remote work has changed the shape of this. Weekday morning coffee visits run something like 10 to 15% below 2019, while afternoon visits are up 20 to 30%. The curve flattened. That helps the dead hours and hurts the peak. Now let me clear up one thing, because you have definitely heard it, and it is false. You have been told that 90% of restaurants fail in the first year. That figure traces back to an American Express commercial from 2003. There is no study behind it. The actual research out of the University of California, Berkeley, using labor statistics data, found first-year failure among single-location restaurants of about 17%. Median lifespan around 4.5 years. Roughly 51% survive 5 years, and about 20% reach 15. 51% at 5 years is close to the average for all American small businesses. Food service is harder than most, but it is not the death sentence the internet claims. So let's put a year on it, both ways. In the good scenario, you have a beverage-weighted, high-throughput operation. Labor sits near 34% rather than 42%. Cost of goods near 28%. Your rent is modest because you chose a location for its traffic rather than its square footage. 200 transactions a day at a $6.50 average puts you around $468,000 a year. And at that cost structure, you are looking at roughly 11% before debt service. That is a real business. It is not a fortune, but it supports an owner who works in it, and it becomes a saleable asset. In the realistic scenario, nothing dramatic happens. You signed a slightly bigger space than you needed because you wanted it to feel generous. That generosity is 20 extra seats, which at 14 square feet each is about 280 additional square feet of rent every month, permanently. Your menu is large because you wanted options. Industry analysis suggests most cafe menus are 30 to 40% bigger than they should be, which means more inventory, more waste, more training, and slower service. Your coffee costs spiked, and you raised prices 3% because you were afraid of losing regulars. Your labor is at 39%, and your break-even sits somewhere around 170 transactions a day, and on a rainy Tuesday in February, you do 130. Nothing burned down. Your reviews are excellent. Your regulars genuinely love you. You just built a business with an 80% product margin and a 2% business margin, and the difference between those two numbers is floor space measured in minutes that you never charged anyone for. That is the whole thing in one line. In almost every retail business, the constraint is inventory. Here the inventory is nearly unlimited and nearly free, and the constraint is a square of floor that has to earn its rent 67 minutes at a time. Which means the honest question was never whether people will pay $6 for a latte. 66% of the country drinks coffee every day, and they are clearly willing. The question is how many times that seat turns over between the moment you unlock the door and the moment you lock it again, and whether you built a business that needs it to turn over fast, or one that is worth more when it does not. This video is general education about how an industry works, not business, financial, or investment advice. If you want the underlying numbers, the National Coffee Association publishes its consumption and channel research. The Bureau of Labor Statistics publishes both coffee prices and wage data, and Starbucks and Dutch Bros disclose store counts, revenue mix, and unit economics in their public filings.